Welcome to the Search and Select Recruitment Podcast, discussing anything from writing CVs all the way to how to approach a job interview and much more.
So in terms of interview preparation, I think we all think of an interview as a company interviewing you. It's very much a case of, it's actually a two-way process. So it's an interview for you just as much as it's an interview for them. So it's you seeing whether the company that you're meeting is actually going to be right for you, as well as the company interviewing you and seeing, are you right for them? So I always think of an interview, think of it as a conversation more than the word interview, because that's effectively what it is. It's a conversation for you to see, are you right for them? And are they right for you? So some real key things then to think about when we're thinking about preparing for interviews. And the preparation is really quite straightforward. Do you know what sort of interview it is? So is it a competency-based interview, or is it a standard interview? If it's a standard interview, that will be very much a case of questions about you, what your skills and experience are, what you can offer, what your aspirations are, and what the job entails. If it's very much about a competency-based interview, that will be very much questions on the actual task of the role and the behaviours that you display when you're actually performing that task. So you really need to think about, if it's a competency-based interview, some really good examples beforehand, but really breaking it down so that you can actually answer the question fully and really sort of be able to answer the question so that they understand that you've done the particular task before, and also the behaviours that you've used to actually complete that task. And often we call this the STAR technique. So that's the situation. What was the situation? What was the task you were actually carrying out? What action did you take? And what was the result of your action, and also about what you did? If you answer a competency-based question with that technique, then you'll answer the question fully. If we think about the types of interviews that we can also have, we've talked about competency, we've talked about standard type interviews. You will either be going to an interview face-to-face, or you'll be going to an interview via Teams or Zoom, which is quite common these days. Let's take face-to-face first. So there's some things we need to think about before we even get to the interview, and that's, do you know where the interview actually is? When you get there, is there parking for you? Do you need to park somewhere else? If you need to park somewhere else, do you need to have the means to be able to pay for the car park? So do you need change? Do you need a card? Do you know who you will be meeting? So you do have the names of the interviewers and who you'll be meeting. What time is it? And do you actually know where the actual location is? Do you actually know where it is? Because it's always good to do a drive-by before you actually attend the interview, so you know on the day exactly where you're going. If you don't and you think you know, guaranteed on the day that you go into the interview, there might be a traffic hold-up, or you might be caught in the office, or you might have somebody ringing you, and then you think, oh, I did leave enough time to go to the interview, but now I haven't got the time, and actually I'm not really sure where it is, and that can create a bit of stress before the interview, which actually you don't need. So if you know exactly where you're going and you've got all of the details beforehand, that will really help. Think as well about what you're going to wear. So it's always good to be smart when you go to an interview, because first impressions really do count. And also you need to think about preparing before the interview, because this is absolutely key. So what do you know about the company that you're going to interview with? Because the company are going to want to know what you know about them. That's really key. And in my experience in the past, where candidates have gone to an interview where they've not done their research on the company and not been able to give them a few facts about the company, it doesn't need to be a lot of information, but 3 bullet points is absolutely fine. And you can gain this very easily by looking at a company's website. They will think, well, if you don't know about that company and you can't tell me who we are and what we do, then why do you want to work here? So always good to do your research beforehand, go on a company's website, look at who they are, and jot down 3 bullet points before you actually go. Thinking about preparation too, if you want to, Take some notes in with you. That's absolutely fine. A company doesn't mind that at all. In fact, it looks like you've prepared thoroughly. I would always sort of counter that by saying, hope you don't mind, but I've brought some interview notes with me today. So as well as that, we've thought about, we know exactly where we're going. We know who we're meeting. We know the time. We know we've dressed smartly. We've done our research on the company. We also need to do some preparation in terms of the job itself that we're applying for. Now, the clues are often about what they will ask you are often in the job description. The job description, there will be a job description for every single role. So I would always recommend that you obtain that job description before you go, and also spend some time preparing beforehand. So when you're looking on the website, spend the time then as well, because you're already in interview mode, looking at the job description and looking at the key responsibilities that are required for that role and what you'll be expected to do. Come up with each of the key responsibilities, look at the key responsibilities and think, where have I done that? What example could I actually give of that? Now, if you know that's going to be a competency-based interview, don't forget to have an example written out on your notes using the STAR technique that we talked about earlier. Think about the key responsibilities. So where have you had to do this? Where have you had to give an example of this? Write it down so you have some good examples for each of the key responsibilities. And also then you'll have a skills and experience section underneath the key responsibilities of things that they're looking for to go hand in hand with the key responsibilities and experience. Think about if they're looking for, say, 5 GCSEs in this particular field at grade C and above, mention. If they're looking for a STEP qualification and you have that, mention if that's key for the role. Mention if they're looking for, if they say 5 years experience or 5+ years experience, start off with, I have 5+ years experience in this type of role. So always look at everything that they've asked for in those job descriptions and always give them a good opening paragraph about yourself. And I think when they ask you about you, think about your strengths, what you're great at, what great feedback you've had in the past. Think about the job description and what the key responsibilities are, and open the actual interview with something along the lines of, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I've got 5.5 years experience working as a senior trust and company administrator. I've STEP qualifications, I've managed a varied portfolio of multiple jurisdictions, and I'm looking for a new role today because I feel that I've reached as far as I can in my current role, and I'm now looking for a new challenge. So what we've done there is we've looked at potentially the job description. We've covered off that we're looking for 5+ years experience. We've covered off we're looking for a STEP qualification. We've covered off that we've managed a portfolio of clients. And we've also covered off why we're actually there at the interview today. So the job description often has all of the clues that you need when we're talking about preparing for an interview. And it's very important, as I've already mentioned, that you spend the time beforehand preparing for that interview so that you're ready and armed with a lot of great examples to be able to sell yourself. If we think about a Teams or a Zoom interview, because they're quite common in today's world, make sure beforehand, because we've talked about as if you're going to an interview face-to-face and in person. Often with Teams and Zoom, you won't be actually visiting an office, so you will be doing it remotely. Think about beforehand, one, that you've had the actual invite through or the dial-in details that you need, depending on whether it's Teams or Zoom. Do you have the correct software loaded onto your PC or laptop or device? I would always check it as well before the event to make sure that it works. And obviously, if you haven't got the correct software, then download it first. Make sure that you know sort of what the time is, who you'll be meeting. Make sure you've got all of that information, and again, prepare. And also think about presentation and what you're going to wear. Not so much, it doesn't matter about what you're wearing on the bottom half if the camera's looking at your top half. So make sure you're smart, because again, just because it's Teams or Zoom doesn't mean that you don't need to make an effort for the interview. I think always have an opening paragraph which covers the key responsibilities that they're looking for and the skills and the experience, because that will answer a lot of the questions that they might have for you in advance. think always have a couple of questions for them as well at the end. Now, if they've already answered a lot of your questions, then please do say, thanks so much. But the questions that I had prepared, you've already answered them for me. Thank you so much. But I have a couple of questions for them. A really good question that often they don't come up with is, what do you expect of me in the first 6 months? That's always a great question because often they don't ask you that one. So that's a great one for you to ask. You could ask, what's a typical day like? What's it like to work here? What's the culture like? How many people are in my team? So there's some good examples or some good questions that you could actually use at the end of an interview. Always as well, shake hands at the interview, and that's when you first meet somebody, and also at the end. Obviously, if it's Teams or Zoom, you won't be doing that, but also remember to say thank you for their time. And always ask them, when, what's the next steps? When will I hear back? I think a big no-no is don't discuss salary in the interview, because that obviously looks like you're concerned about salary more than anything else. Now, if they discuss salary with you, that's absolutely fine. But I think in terms of salary, it's generally a no-no at first interview. So I think my biggest tip for you for preparing for an interview is prepare, be really thorough with it. And if you do that, and remember, it's a two-way conversation. Remember that if you do that, you know exactly where you're going, you are fully prepared, then the interview will be a success. Good luck.